Howdy everyone, back again with another video. Sorry it's been a while, I've just been doing shit really. Just going internal, meditating, working out. Just got an 8 kilo mace, I'm excited about that. So this is part 2 for air element or breath. So how does that relate to movement specifically? I just wanted to clarify something from the book that I was referencing in part 1, Stalking the Wild Pendulum. So I got it backwards. I said that if you know because the position of the pendulum is unknown, its velocity is indeterminate. I had it backwards, so I'll just actually read it from here. We know that at rest, when the pendulum is changing direction, its velocity is 0, but the momentum at low speeds at least is equal to velocity multiplied by mass. However, if we multiply any quantity by a 0, we get 0. Thus, we have now established that the momentum of the pendulum at that point is 0. That is, we know its value very precisely, it's 0. But we have said before that if we know precisely the momentum of a particle, then its position becomes diffuse and completely indefinite. That is, the pendulum can be just about any place, even at the end of the universe. That is, yes, but it has very little time to get there, because this whole event occurs in 0 time. So there we go again. The pendulum has to disappear in all directions at infinite velocity. It will have to expand very rapidly into a space, like a balloon, and then collapse just as rapidly. So that's basically what I was explaining in the last video, where how I imagine it and how I've experienced it in breathing meditations, and it's very powerful, is you imagine when you're breathing in that you are breathing in the farthest points, oxygen, life force, everything, from the farthest points of existence, cosmos, whatever you want to call it, universe, God, whatever. You breathe it in, and then in that rest point, you actually expand out again into the universe, contract, and then you release back and give your breath back. Anyway, so that's just to clarify on that. I had it backwards. To go into part 2, the practical applications of breath. Building on the first principle, I believe it was in the other video, when you breathe out, you're moving into the fetal position essentially. So if you were to imagine blowing a dart, your body flexes and moves into a fetal position. And if you were to breathe in, like for example, I think a good example is when you go into cold water, and right around is for fellas, when it touches your balls, you go, you know what I mean? You'll breathe in and you'll tense up, and your whole body erects, because when you breathe in, it's an excitant for the body. So how to integrate that into movement? First off, the easiest way to start off is with a squat, which is essentially where you're just moving into the fetal position, but in a controlled way. So, like so. So you breathe in as you come up, breathe out as you go down. That makes it easier for the mechanics of the body to work for the movement that you're trying to do. Usually we get taught the opposite when you go to a personal trainer. For example, if you were to do like weighted squats, you get taught to breathe in on the way down and breathe out on the way up, because that's the contraction part of the movement. But that's pretty much kind of tricking your brain's mechanics of how to actually move. It's kind of putting the foot on the brake and the accelerator at the same time, because your breathing is telling you to do one thing, but the movement is saying do another. Moving on, if we go to a lunge, also it helps to correlate these movements to actual life events. So for example, a squat, some people, the movement squat doesn't register the same way as sitting down. Whereas if you tell someone to sit down, they might do a perfect squat. But if you tell someone to do a squat, they might do it a little clunky, because they've actually got a different association in their mind. So keep that in mind. So lunge, which is also just associated with stepping over something. So you step over, there has to be some kind of weight bearing on that. That's a lunge. We get taught as well that you're only doing a lunge if it's a proper full lunge like this. It's not really the case. That's just a full lunge. In a normal dynamic environment, you step over something and there's just a weight bearing act, and that's a lunge. But in that case, as you come down, breathe in, like so. So because the action of the body is moving towards the fetal position in this way, you breathe out, and then as it opens up, you breathe in. Now obviously it's different with a lunge because you have weight bearing on each side, so you can just because it's a constant motion, you just pretty much switch sides that you're breathing in and out on. Gets a little complicated with unilateral stuff. So then you've got a bend, which is basically putting something down or picking something up. So like so, you just bend down, pick up. Now with the breathing, you want to breathe out while you're bending down, breathe in while you're bending up. You'll probably see a pattern here pretty much anytime you're closing the body off, you breathe out. Anytime you open the body up, you breathe in. What's next? We got a push. So push, you got most common movement probably for a push is a push-up. We get taught again, breathe in. Sorry, we get taught to breathe out. Sorry, getting it backwards. See, I only know the proper way, so it's hard for me to think of it wrong. Yeah, we'd get taught to breathe in on the way down. Sorry, breathe out on the way down. Oh fuck, I can't remember actually. The proper way to do it is to breathe in on the way down because you're opening up your chest. Breathe out on the way up because you're closing your chest. That's the proper way to do it. And then the most common dynamic movement for this is throwing. So if you try to throw with a backwards breathing pattern, you're gonna have a bad time. So if you try to throw, the body doesn't know what to do. My body thought it had to extend then. Whereas if I go, you can even see in the movement there I had more power. I was putting the same amount of exertion in. But because the breathing drives the mechanics, you want the breathing to facilitate the mechanics, not hinder it. Okay? So then you got to pull. So if you were to pick something up, like for example, go down and bend and then grab something and pull it up to you to then, maybe put it above you for whatever reason, whatever. In that pulling motion, you should be breathing in because you're opening the chest and the whole body is opening and it's supinating, right? So breathe out, breathe in. Again, we get taught the opposite. It's amazing to me, and it's not personal trainers' fault. It's how they get trained, but I don't know what they're basing their stuff on because it's not physiology. It's quite infuriating for me actually, because you can cause joints to lock up and stuff, and you can because the joints thinking it has to do one thing from the breathing, but the movement's requiring another. It locks up, and you can end up tearing up joints and stuff. So it actually really bothers me. The final movement, well, actually no, not the final movement. The sixth movement is a twist. The twist is the catalyst movement for all movements. So when we're a baby and we're laying on the ground, in the first movement we actually call it as imbibition, not imbibition. I can't remember. Anyway, the first movement we have as a baby is twisting. So imagine this is the floor. We twist. We go in an ambulation motion. I think that's what it is, ambulation. So and that's when we actually technically have a tail. So we kind of worm around a bit, and that's a twisting motion. So that's the catalyst motion for all movements. So if we don't have an efficient twist, we can't perform any movement, right? Now the foundation, sorry, getting ahead of myself. Incorporating a twist, it depends on what angle you're twisting from. So for example, the movement of wood chop, if you do a reverse wood chop, which is going from the bottom up, because the overall mechanics of the body are extending, you breathe out and breathe in, breathe out, breathe in. If you were in a transverse plane, which is the natural plane of motion for those muscles, transverse abdominis, which is the muscle fibers go this way, deep in the abdominal wall. If you're going to do it that way, then what I like to do is basically combine it if you can. So you would basically, if you had a cable there, you would twist. It depends on which side you're working. So if you're trying to work on the twist that way, you're wanting to extend that way. You're wanting to work on this oblique. You wanted to work on this sling system, and I'll get into that in another video. It's a bit complicated, but it doesn't have to be. And then if you were going the other way, right? Now if you were to go top down, it's the reverse of going bottom up. So you'll breathe in, right? Now the best way to incorporate that into your daily life, because you might be thinking, well, I never am using a cable. Think of reaching. So if you reach up, right, you should be breathing in. If you're reaching down, breathing out. If you're just reaching up, it doesn't really matter. I just fell. Hold on. Yeah, if you're reaching this way, it doesn't really matter because it's more of a whichever way you're actually acting. So if you're reaching this way, then you breathe out. If you're reaching this way, you breathe out. If you're reaching behind you, you'd breathe in. Reaching behind, breathe in. And that incorporates a twisting motion. So the last movement is gait, or walking, jogging, and running. And I say those in 3 separate ones because as far as the brain's concerned, they're 3 different programs. Like, you can have an efficient walking pattern, inefficient jogging, and an efficient running pattern, or any combination of that. You know, you want all 3 to be efficient so that your mechanics are ready for anything that you need to do, or anything that you want to do in the case of being alive in this day and age. We don't really need to know how to sprint to run away from a lion, but it's good to go for a run. It's good to feel like you can run and do stuff. Yeah, with walking it becomes a little interesting just because it's not really single reps. So in something like a bend, that's a single rep, or even a squat, that's a single rep or a push, right? Because this is more of a pendulum motion, because you're coming forward and back, forward and back. 1 rep is more like 2 individual pendulums, so it's more like timing it per oscillation. So say if you wanted to program a healthy breathing pattern or do a breathing meditation with walking, you could try and breathe in for 4 rotations. So 1, 2, 3, 4, hold for 4, and then out for 4. And just doing that in a meditation once a day, every now and then, for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, that's the same as going to the gym and programming a movement. You're programming yourself how to breathe properly and efficiently and with movement while you're doing everyday things. So yeah, that's part 2 of how to integrate the air element into movement, from the theory to the practical. Sorry if I started rambling there, I get a little excited and a bit ADHD probably, but yeah, next video will be center of gravity. I'm already started doing my reading on it. I'm pretty excited. I think it's going to be interesting. It's already kind of contorting my head a bit, but yeah, hope this helps. Let me know. See you next time.